Hello and welcome back to the Macca's Talk Hockey Podcast, the podcast where me and Dan are going to take you through all the National Ice Hockey League news, scores, and the National Cup final result as well. And congratulations to the Leeds Knights, who are the 24-25 NIHL Cup champions. They've finally done it, Dan. We said on the last pod, will it be third time lucky in the final? And they got the job done, and we'll break it down in a minute. But they needed to win it, didn't they?
Yeah, I mean, it's still mental to think that when you look at that team, they haven't actually won this cup yet.
Yeah.
Like you sort of because they've obviously won these league titles, they've won Coventry. You never really think about this cup,
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, credit to them for winning the cup. They've done all of it now. Um, and they've obviously they put themselves in the shot of the treble this year. So there's always that to come. You never know, but yeah, I mean, yeah, congratulations to Leeds for getting it done and obviously getting it across the line in the end.
Yeah, it's obviously we'll break it down in a minute after we've got on to the one bit of news which was from last weekend. But yeah, just credit to them. They were due it and they got it done. They got over that hump. It's been 4 years of trying. Obviously, last year they went out in the semi-final, but they've done it, and it was a really good home performance. And from what I've been told, obviously I'm gutted I couldn't go, but apparently it was the loudest the castle's ever been. I saw all the pictures, the videos. It just looked unbelievable. So yeah, I'm sure the Knights fans, that's a day they'll never forget. And as you said, obviously they're used to winning stuff, but they haven't won that trophy yet, and that could kind of spur them on now. Okay, we've got a chance at the treble. We've not lost that first trophy now. We've got it. That could now give them even more motivation to just go and get the treble.
Yeah, that's it, and that's a scary thought to think about as well because a motivated Leeds like that is never is never a good thing for
Yeah.
other teams. Um, But yeah, that team is going to have that buzz again now. Like they've obviously always had that buzz, but getting that trophy, they've sort of got that feeling of silverware already. And yeah, they're just going to be buzzing now to obviously give this a really positive end to the season, and then just push for more silverware now.
Yeah. We'll break down the final in a second. We are actually going to have a Leeds player on. I'm not sure who it will be, but we will have a Leeds player on next week. They've obviously got a game on Tuesday when this we'll probably release this on Tuesday, but they'll have a game against Sheffield as this is going out. So they can't actually come on today, which we're recording on Monday. So hopefully we'll get one on next week. I'm not gonna spoil who we're gonna get on, but it should be a new one. And I know it's a player you really like as well, Dan. But the one bit of news, and this caused a bit of controversy around the National League. And yes, Charlie was put out a tweet. He wasn't too happy about it from a National League point of view, and that is Sam Tremblay being recalled or signed, if you want, full time with the Steelers. Now, obviously, the Steelers are in their little push. They got a big win against Belfast, which I think puts them 5 or 6 points behind now. And they've added Sam Tremblay. It's a great signing for them, isn't it, Dan? I don't blame them for doing it, but it does screw over the Steel Dogs a bit, doesn't it?
Yeah, it is a little bit like that. I suppose going into the season, you always knew that there was going to be like obviously Tremblay was going to be able to play for both. Like he was in their CHL squad, and obviously they made it clear before the season started that he was on the two way and stuff like that. But I think a
Well,
lot of
no, that
fans,
was only for the CHL though.
yeah,
He's not able to. He wasn't able to play in the Elite League because under
okay.
contract he was an import for the Steel Dogs, not the Steelers, and you can't have a two-way with an import.
Yeah. So a lot of fans are obviously thinking, yeah, that's fine. He can play the CHL, but then we'll have him at Steel Dogs,
Yeah.
and now all of a sudden, when Steelers need that guy, they just go and take him like that. When to be honest, in a three import league, a Tremblay's more needed in a Steel Dogs team than a Steelers
Yeah.
team. They've obviously got a team full of imports, so it can be a bit annoying for Steel Dogs fans, which I can understand, but at the same time they have got that partnership, so
Yeah.
you could sort of see why Fox would have gone for that option.
So I'll start with the side of the Steelers. They are owned by, I think it's Tony Smith, isn't it? He
Something
owns
like that,
both
yeah.
teams. Steelers is the bigger team. They get sold out fans. What, 8,000 is it, Dan, in that
Yeah,
arena? They're obviously going for their trophies, and they want to bring in a good caliber import who they can trust in Sam Tremblay, who we've seen this season. For me, him and a couple others are the best imports in our league, and he's settled straight into that team. So I can see it from that point of view, just all out Steelers. Also, what you said, they're owned by the same people, so it's not like they're just taking it from another team. It's within the same organization which took over them. And maybe we might not have the Steel Dogs if it wasn't for them. That's fair enough. But from a Steel Dogs point of view, the deadline passed of bringing any new players in. Um, and the Steelers would have known that. And then they've pinched him after that. So the Steel Dogs can't even get a replacement in their little playoff push come the end of the season. They've taken their best player, in my opinion. Walker Sommer's unbelievable, like goal scoring wise. We'll get to him in a second because he's just hit an unbelievable achievement. But I think as an all round player, Dan, I think Tremblay, for me, in my opinion, was their best player and probably their most important player in terms of controlling that top line. And they've just taken him. And if I was a Steel Dogs fan, I'd be absolutely fuming. And don't get me wrong, he's signed back for next season. But who's to say that the Steelers get another injury and they just take Sam Tremblay again right at the last minute, Dan?
yeah, and the thing is, Steel Dogs fans aren't focusing on next season. Like they're
No,
focusing
they
on
want
now,
now.
and
Yeah.
obviously Steel Dogs fans, they they've had a tough few years prior to this year. Obviously, they've had like a lot of people have left, and sort of they've been struggling with like attendances and stuff like that. So this season, they've really got that exciting project of having that little pathway, and their team looks like they can compete for playoffs.
Yeah.
And they're finally getting to that stage like they were back in the day with obviously Hewitt, Bissonnette, Graham, stuff like that, like the squad that they had then. And I think, yeah, the fans are obviously they were hoping for playoffs, and I'm not saying they're not going to make commentary because they've got rid of one guy. Like,
No,
I'm not saying that,
they
but
could still do it, but it will
Trombley
make it a
was
lot
going to be
harder.
a massive factor in that
Yeah.
push to Coventry. So yeah, it is tough, but I think that's the sort of it's the things you take. It's an organisation, it's a business, and they need to run it like that. And if they want to win games at the top standard, at the highest level in Britain, then they need to make these moves, and they've had to just look at it in that way.
I completely agree with what you're saying. It's a business. I get it from that point of view. The thing that I don't like is Steelers fans being very up themselves, being very fickle, in my opinion, in not even seeing it from a Steel Dogs point of view. Yes, you're a bigger team. Yes, you're in the elite league. Yes, you're the bigger Sheffield team. But can you see it from the Steel Dogs' point of view? They've had their best player pinched, and also this is the thing that frustrates me. One, it's that the import they couldn't replace him, so they've taken him after you can replace him. That's very frustrating from a Steel Dogs point of view. And the other thing is. They talk about this Brit development, and I completely get they've given chances to Nordstrom and Ulrich this season. That's brilliant, and they get those training with them. But they bang on about Brit development, and then as soon as it comes to it, with that pathway, they don't take Nordstrom and try and give him a chance to fill that spot when there's an injury. They just take Steel Dog's best player, and I think that's the bit which frustrates me a lot, Dan. Because it's all about this Brit development and how they've pushed that this whole season, putting a positive spin on it, and I was all for it. And Nordstrom was getting some opportunities. Ulrich's obviously been in and out. And then when push comes to shove, they just take the import, the best player, and it does screw over the Steel Dogs in terms of their best players now gone for the rest of the season. But I completely get it from the Steelers' point of view. But if you're looking at it from our point of view, in terms of a National League fan, it is just crap, isn't it? It
Yeah,
is. It's annoying.
yeah, no, it definitely is. I do agree as well. Obviously, you can look at it from both sides, and obviously, a load of people are going to have different opinions. They've had different opinions about Steelers and Steel Dogs for the whole season, and this just sort of erupted a little bit when it happened. So
Yeah.
it's got a few fans talking at least.
I think the main thing I want to get my point across from it is I completely get Steelers fans and wanting the best. Just look at it from a Steel Dogs fan point of view, right? Just look at it. Don't put your bias aside. Look at it from a Dogs fan point of view who supported the Steel Dogs for many, many years. before the ownership when they were winning stuff. It's not like they weren't winning stuff before this new ownership come in. They won the playoffs, they won the cup. They were a really really good team. So yeah, that's all I'd say. I completely get both sides of it, though. I completely get that. But from a National League point of view, which is what our main podcast is, it is very frustrating for the Steel Dogs. And I'm sure a lot of those players are a bit frustrated as well because that is one of their main guys gone, if not their main guy. But as you said, Dan, it's the National League. They've still got some really good players. Maybe it gives opportunity to some other young players, and it gives opportunity for Nordstrom to step up, which he has been doing as well. So yeah, we'll cut that one there down on talking about that bit of news. But should we get back to the final?
Yeah, why not? Let's do it.
So obviously we mentioned in the last one I wasn't able to get to them because Swindon had the double header with Milton Keynes, and we were unfortunately in MK, which we'll talk about a bit later. But yeah, so the first leg, obviously in Romford, sold out, 1,200
Oh,
fans. The videos looked unbelievable. Just the noise from the Romford fans. I had Romford fans saying it was the loudest the Sapphire's been. It was an unbelievable night, and it didn't disappoint. It was exactly what we thought it would be, Dan. That close battle, and Leeds are winning 4-3 with 5 minutes to go, and that Romford crowd just roaring them on, and they get two quick goals in the last minutes, and 5-4 lead after that, and just a great game. And we said we wanted it to put a really good positive on the National League, and I think that was the perfect start to it, wasn't it?
yeah, it was. We were saying obviously when we were looking at the scores, it is literally a split image of the MK game.
It was,
Um,
yeah.
it was literally the exact same. Like the game just went the same. Like Leeds came out strong, like MK did, scored the goals early on, like MK
Went 2
did,
nil up.
and then Romford built into a game again, and that's what they've done all year. Like they've built themselves into games, and just the big guys that we were talking about as well. The big guys were stepping up, like we said, and really giving that team a chance. And yeah, and then they go and score that last minute goal to get the lead going into the second leg, just like they did against MK.
Yeah.
And you couldn't really write it. It's weird. It's weird how similar the two games are, but yeah, I mean, that's a great, that's an advert for hockey right there. Like Romford, looking at their story, what they've done, going up against Leeds in the cup final, sold out crowd, and they go and put on that performance. And yeah, I mean, if there's a few fans there that were at their first game, maybe for a cup game, I mean, what a game to go to if it's your first one. And I wouldn't be surprised if they get a few people back as well.
Oh, absolutely. And we've said they've had that the players have had their eyes in the back of their head looking towards that game. They know that is the big one for the season. And Shaw Miller, I'm going to throw his name out. We've spoke about him so much on this podcast. Now Tremblay's gone, and this is an opinion. We throw out our opinions on the podcast, and I'm going to give one here. Shaw Miller for me. I think he's been player of the season. I know Sobchak's got so much points this season, and he's probably going to finish as the top point scorer. He couldn't quite hit the 100 this weekend. I think he's on 99. But Shaw Miller, Dan, it's just single-handedly creating those moments. He can create moments out of absolutely nothing. And for me, I would have said with Sam Tremblay, they're very different players, but now Tremblay's gone up to the Steelers. Shaw Miller for me is the best player in this league. And 4 point night, 2 goals, 2 assists, just unbelievable. And that is what we expect. I think you chose him as your one to watch. I know that's quite an obvious one, but that's why you picked him, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people can call me boring. I know Charlie called me boring, um, but he was one to watch. I think a lot of people were watching him, and there's the reason why. Um, but yeah, I mean, I've watched him play. We've all watched him play, and the way he can, like you said, just carry the puck. You don't think anything's happening. All of a sudden, he'll go through three guys and just snipe it, like just like that, and that's a goal. And he's a great guy on the PK, great guy on the power play as well. He can run a line. He can do it. He works so well with Schufelt. He brings the best out of Schufelt, like we've already said before.
Yeah.
And yeah, he's an unreal pickup. And for that Romford team, like the circumstances that they're in, having a player like that is what they needed. They needed a guy that can just take the game by the scruff and just do
Yeah.
it. And that's exactly what they've got in Sean Miller.
Yeah. For me, he's probably been player of the season. I think Sobchak might get it, but Sean Miller's been.
Because of the team that he's in,
Oh,
because he's
yeah.
in Romford, like
Just what
so,
he's doing with that organization.
yeah,
And Leish knew that he needed two big boy imports to come into this team and run a line. He knew he needed that, and he's brought Schufel and Miller in. They've both been probably up there with the top partnerships in this league. And them two single-handedly together are just creating moments for Romford. Don't get me wrong, the likes of TJ Anderson, he got a big goal just to get Romford back in it after going 2 goals down. That was literally a minute after Leeds went 2-0 up. Don't get me wrong, that line and Sylvester and Morrison coming in as well, they've had their moments, and the third line knows their role in just grinding it out. But Romford is based around Miller and Schufel, and those two really, really shone on that Saturday night. But if we're moving to the Sunday, and obviously Romford having that 1 goal lead, we said, Dan, that 1 goal lead, it can go just like that, can't it? And I actually said, I'll say this on the podcast because a lot of people, I saw a lot of people online, they were saying Romford needed to get 2 or 3 or 4 goals ahead in that first leg. I actually said to you and Charlie, I think they just need to not lose that game just to give them a chance in that second game for it to be a 1 game shootout. And I still back what I said. I just think they couldn't have lost that, and they didn't, and they got that 1 goal lead. But in that second leg, Dan, I don't think Aldridge could have dreamt of a better start to that second leg. 3 goals in 7 minutes to go 2 goals up in the tie, and then you end the period 4-1 up, 4-1 after 10 minutes. Just an absolute bonkers start. But when the castle was sounding like how it is, with over 2,000 fans, you got Kieran Brown just absolutely tearing it up, getting 2 goals in 2 minutes. Just that is Leeds at their best, isn't it? And they can steamroll through anyone. We saw it against Swindon in the playoffs last season.
yeah. The thing is, what they would have been saying in that game is obviously Romford are going in with the goal lead, so they're going away from home. They're going into Leeds, which is a tough place to play. You need to get on them quick. Like
Straight
you
away.
can't let them settle into a game because they've got that lead. Like they do need to push for a goal, but they don't need to push for that goal. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They've got that goal. Like they could. I know. I know it's easier said than done shutting down Leeds,
They
but
could try and sit on
they
it.
yeah they could try and sit on a 1 goal lead. I mean, it's very risky to do, but they can try it. But Leeds were like, no, we're not letting anyone get settled into this game. Just go straight on them. And I mean, that start when Aldridge told him what he told him before the game, that's exactly what he wanted.
Yeah.
And the big guy stepped up, like the Brown, he stepped up again. He's been hitting some good form recently. He's
Oh,
had some big weekends, obviously MK as well the weekend before. Um, but yeah, I mean, Leeds went about that game perfectly, and they just finished the game off after that. After that first period, that's when they sat on that game, and they passed the pressure over to Romford, and they needed those goals. And yeah, when Leeds are playing their best shutdown game, I saw it against MK the weekend before in MK. It's so hard to break down, and yeah, it's near on impossible to score 2 or 3 goals like that.
yeah, just quickly mention, I don't think Matt Barron actually played a shift in that first leg. I think he might have had a knock or he wasn't feeling it. So they were without Matt Barron in that first leg. 2 minutes into the second leg, he scores a goal in the slot. I've watched the highlights, and you could just see from his face, it was like just relief. He got that goal. That was the tying goal of the whole tie with 2 minutes
Yeah.
in. And then the 2 goals, Kieran Brown, the second one, just taking it into his hands, just a really nice goal. And the third one was a really good team goal. And then Jake Sylvester actually scored a really nice goal to get back into the game. And you're thinking, okay, here we go. Romford have kind of settled it back again. They've got a goal straight back after that one just to kind of settle it back down. But then Buesa, and I mentioned him, big game Buesa, he gets that goal, 2 goals ahead. And as you said, once Leeds can sit on a 2 or 3 goal lead, they're so hard to break down. First of all, you've got to get through the forward core, which when they're sitting on that lead, you've got the likes of Bissonette, Barron. that third line is just horrid to play against. Finn Braden, Ollie Endicott, and Innis Gallagher. They're going to just keep going on you, press, 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 forecheck in. And then you've got to get past the defense of McMullen, Bo Neely. You've then got the bigger guys in Griffin, Hahir, Baldwin, and then you've got Gospel, who's just a wall himself. And fair play to Leeds, shutting 40 minutes to shut out that Romford team, Dan. That is some way to just kill off a final, really.
Yeah, and you know what Romford would have been going like in that game. Like that cup final is what they've been waiting for that since MK. Um, and they finally got there, and they would have just been pushing. I haven't watched the highlights, but
Oh,
they must have just been pushing and pushing and pushing, just trying anything to get that goal, just to get a bit of momentum. Because Romford are best when they've got momentum behind
momentum,
them,
yeah.
and because they're away from home, it's obviously hard to get it from the crowd. I know Romford sold out that away block, so massive credit to them.
Yeah.
But it's hard to get that momentum from the crowd when you're away, so you need to sort of build it within the team. And you saw obviously Bradley Taylor having that fight to try and
Yeah.
get a bit of
Oh,
a
yeah, I forgot to
spark
mention
going.
that, yeah.
Credit to him, obviously dropping the gloves, trying to build something for his team from that. And obviously Romford fans have been talking about the team not having a sort of fighter in the team anymore this season, sort of not sticking up for themselves. And I mean, that's a perfect game to fight
Yeah.
because they needed that spark.
Yeah.
And you never know if that game could have gone differently after that. It could have, because hockey's just one of those sports that can just change a game having one fight. Um, but it just wasn't to be for Romford.
No.
But they can't put their heads down after that.
Oh,
I
no.
mean, it's a massive journey for them, and this is a season to build on from now.
Absolutely. We said, I remember actually before the season in the Romford preview, we said this Romford, new Romford era is something to build on. It's one for the future. And the fact they've got to a final so early is just credit to them. And it's gutting, but also Leeds were favourites. Let's not beat around the bush here. They were favourites for it. They hadn't won it before, and they're back at home. And yeah, just when you got Kieran Brown playing like he is, Sam Gospel, and credit to, I can imagine McMullen and Bo Neely just shutting down Shaw Miller and Shufelt to the best they could in that second and third period. Because I think I messaged a few people, they said Miller had a few chances, but Gospel bailed Leeds out on a couple of occasions. So just a really, really good final. Leeds getting the job done. And commiserations to Romford. They should still be so proud of the team for getting to the position they are. And they've still got playoffs. They've
Yeah,
got
they've still got
playoffs.
Coventry.
You never know. You never know. You could cause another little upset in that group to try and get to Coventry, and then who knows what can happen. It's two-game shootout. So yeah, the Leeds Knights, the 24-25 cup winners. And yeah, will they get the treble? We'll have to see. But yeah, let's get into the National League then. Back to the fixtures of this weekend because there were some games, and we're going to go through them. Obviously, Leeds have those two games in hand, but I believe they play tomorrow, Dan, on a Tuesday night. And then they play on Friday as well, both against Sheffield. So hopefully they haven't got too drunk and hungover from celebrating the trophy win. But the first game on the Saturday night was the one we were at, which was Swindon Wildcats and the Lightning, the double header. A big, big weekend for both teams, Dan, coming into it. Obviously, Swindon needs to try and close the gap on the Lightning. And it was a weird game, wasn't it? Because they're always really close games between Swindon and Lightning. They have been this season. And the quality normally has been so, so high. You cannot fault the effort both teams were putting in. I thought defensively, throwing the bodies round, there was some big hits in there. Defensively, I thought it was actually really good from both teams. There wasn't loads and loads of quality though, was there?
No, you
It's a weird one, wasn't it?
yeah, when you look at the teams, there wasn't that finishing product that
No.
you'd expect. Like it would just sort of be if like the only chances that they'd have is from like broken plays,
Yeah. In the
and
slots.
yeah, and it's like silly passes into the central zone. It's like
Yeah.
silly passes off the board, losing the puck in the corner. It's just like yeah, silly little plays that you wouldn't expect to see out from both teams.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it was nerves. I don't know if it was
Yeah.
just a bit of, I don't know, like holding the stick a bit too tight or anything like that. But it wasn't the game that you've seen before in the link with MK Swindon.
Yeah.
Like the last time they were in there, it was a very high quality game. Obviously, that was an OT game as well, and yeah, it was tough, but I didn't think the reffing was too great. I think
No,
that
it wasn't.
sort of set the tone for the game. I'm not one to sort of go on about the refs, but
Yeah.
it sort of set the tone for the game, like that first call, and it just
You could hear
seemed
the
like
fans as well. They were getting a bit frustrated, and I
yeah,
actually think it wasn't great for both teams. It wasn't biased at all. I don't
no,
think
it wasn't
towards
biased.
Swindon. There
No,
was a
no,
few
it wasn't
calls,
biased.
but this is the thing. We don't like digging on refs because we would be absolutely terrible at the job. Me and Dan probably wouldn't be able to keep up with the bloody skating, let alone
I wouldn't be able to get on the ice.
no,
So.
Dan can't even skate. But we are there to criticize if we think it was, and I think it was one of them games, Dan, where maybe a couple called when you could have let it go, and then it kind of sets a preference for the rest of the game, and it kind of reflected in the game as well in terms of quality and stuff like that. But if we're going back to the actual game, Lightning scored a really nice power play goal, which maybe shouldn't have been a power play. It was a bit of a soft one, but really nice power play. When Lightning's power play is at its best, that's the kind of goal you expect, isn't it? Tic tac toe in the slot. Gulliver scored. Hamill then scored a squeaker, which Rennie will want back. It hit the one area which kind of the unlucky area where it just
The only
bounces off
area
and
that
goes
wasn't
in.
covered, really.
Yeah, it's one of them unlucky ones, but you want it back. And then this was probably the best goal of the night, would you say? The Blues one where he slap shot it from the point.
Yeah,
No one really closed him down, but it
the
was a
most
nice
clear one,
finish.
really. The,
And Plusy, third goal of the season, but that kind of got the Wildcats back in it, didn't they? They needed that goal because 2-0 down, the crowd was a bit flat. There wasn't really too much going. Plusy got that goal, and then the Wildcats, I think, were the better team in that second period. Obviously, Aaron getting that goal. We get a power play going into the third period, and we got to mention them. Tim Wallace and Carter
oh,
Hamill, for me, were MK's best two players on the night, weren't they, Dan? The third line was so good. And Carter Hamill obviously scored that goal on Mar. He then made a really nice pass over to Wallace, and Wallace sniped it in. And you got to say, on that third line, Tim Wallace, Hamill, that new third line, it's worked really well for the Lightning in previous weeks, hasn't it?
yeah. I mean, I've been praising Hamill. I thought Carter played really good in the Leeds weekend as
Yeah.
well,
You
and
you mentioned him in the last pod, didn't
yeah,
you?
yeah. And I was saying to obviously you and Charlie that he's found his role now. Like
Yeah.
he's found how he needs to play on that team on that third line, and having a guy like Tim Wallace with you, it's sort of it gives you that guy to obviously pass to. He's not Hamill's not a guy that's going to go through like three guys and score, but he's a guy that's going to work and work and work, go into the corners, get the puck, and give it to Wallace, and Wallace will be that guy that can shoot. Um, yeah, just having Wallace with Hamill gives that sort of pass. Like Hamill doesn't have to go and do it on his own because he's not that type of guy. Like he'll know that himself. He's not that type of person that'll do that. But it gives Wallace that chance to get into that position, let Hamill battle hard in the corner, and he'll know he's going to come up with that puck, and he'll just need to get into the position, sort of like we talk about with Nell, like
Yeah.
being on that line. Like he just needs to make sure he's in that position.
Yeah.
Um, but I also thought Gulliver on the ice as well. Gulliver had a
Yeah.
really good game on Saturday. And their special teams as well. The PK was very good all weekend. Um, but yeah, it was just you could definitely see Wallace and Hammer were the standouts.
I know there's been a lot of frustration this season with the imports, and don't get me wrong, with the production from other imports in the league compared to the Lightnings, you can see why some Lightning fans were a bit talking about it. But it did really work, Wallace playing on that third line, because they've got so many good Brits which can play on the top six. I think 4 or 5 of the six have played in the Elite League the last 2 seasons. So obviously, yeah, 3-2, short-handed goal. Swindon have to try and get back in it again. And credit to them, they really dig deep. Lightning give away a couple sloppy penalties, didn't they, Dan? Put us on the 5-on-3. You can't put Swindon on a 5-on-3. Glenn Billing, another scrappy goal, really, in the slot, just flicks it in. And I think at the end of it, both teams deserved a point. And obviously, we'll talk about the Sunday in a bit, but that's a really big point for Milton Keynes because they know if they win on the Sunday in regulation, they've actually gained a point on Swindon. That's exactly what they did. But it was nice to see Malazinski get that overtime winner. Obviously, Swindon getting that win. We hadn't played that Sunday game yet, so we could have won that Sunday game and gained some points on them. But yeah, Malazinski was probably Swindon's best player with Clues, would you say?
Yeah, he was, and that's another guy that's really finding form.
Oh,
Um, you're lucky Charlie isn't on this weekend because he would have been talking about him a lot. But yeah, he's really grown. He's showing what he can do now. Like
yeah, playing with confidence.
from his standard, he's had a slow first half of the year. But he's starting to look like that guy now that can run the play. He can take the puck into the zone, pass it to him, and he'll go around the boards and he'll cycle it round, look for
Yeah.
that pass. And yeah, for Swindon, that's a really positive thing going into obviously the other half of the season, going into playoffs as well. You want guys like Malatinski to be at his best, and yeah, he's really starting to pick it up now.
I think, especially knowing that Bricknell can't just keep up this mega crazy streak all season, that's when Malazinski then steps up and now steps up, which they have been the last couple of weeks. And then you hope come playoffs, both of them will be able to hit that top form. But yeah, it was a really nice win on Saturday. As I said, the quality was quite weird. It was one of them cagey games, but I know it's a smaller ice pad, so Swindon kind of have to try and play that cagey game. But Swindon get that win on the Saturday. 4-3 against the Lightning. And then we move on to the next game, the other Southern game, just 45 minutes down the road. The Bristol Pitbulls against the Peterborough Phantoms. And Dan, Peterborough were never losing this game, were they? We know what happened last time. I think it was 10-2 to the Bristol Pitbulls. The first time the Pitbulls hit 10, I think Peterborough knew that coming in. They did not want to lose that game again, did they? And they put on a clinic. 9-2 against the Pitbulls. Just dominant. Huff getting a hat trick in that game. He's picking up a lot. He's just going under the radar again, isn't he? I know we spoke a lot about him at the start of the season, but now other players are doing really well. He's kept that consistency. Gretton got on the score sheet. Keen Aston got on the score sheet. So yeah, just a dominant win for Phantoms, wasn't it?
Yeah, like you said, they went into that game and they were winning. Like
Yeah,
they weren't losing. They almost did the same as what Bristol did to them the last time they played.
nearly
They
got
almost
10.
got the 10.
I
Um,
bet they really wanted to get it as well.
oh yeah, they would have 100% wanted to get it. But you said his name, Kai Naston.
Yeah,
He's had a good few games.
yeah, yeah, sure.
He scored a few goals in past weekends as well. He's starting to sort of pick it up a little bit.
He's now got
And
10 points this season, 4 goals, 6 assists as a 17-year-old.
yeah, and that's really good for him.
Yeah,
Like that's really really good. And to be under, we've said it so many times, but to be under a coach like Slava, if you can have a season where you've been on the upside, the next season after that will be even better because you've gained that trust from Slava.
yeah,
And he's obviously getting rewarded for what he's doing. Like he's getting the ice time. He's given Slava back what he's obviously given him as well, and it's all sort of working out. And yeah, he's a guy that's really stepped up recently. But yeah, Peterborough, that's a big win for them. Big win for obviously just an answer back game, and yeah, they just turned up in Bristol.
tough night for Bristol, isn't it? And I think after this weekend, it's going to be really tough for them to try and make it back into that playoff spot. And I think the Bees are only 1 point behind them, as well. But we'll get into that at the end when we review the league. But yeah, just a tough one for Bristol, and
I think
there's
I
get
think
even
Napier also pulled himself, so it's always
yeah.
tough when your backup goes in halfway through a game when they're already sort of getting beat quite heavily.
And yeah, we'll talk about the second Bristol game in a bit. But on to the game in Sheffield on the Saturday. Sheffield against the Bees, and obviously the first game without Tremblay. So they were down to 2 imports in Sommer and Halfors. And it was Sommer and Halfors who won them the game. Sommer with 2 goals, Halfors with 2 as well, and then Phillips getting the other goal. But Walker Sommer, Elmiri Halfors, they've got a lot to carry now. Obviously with Tremblay going, I know he's that centreman, so I think Nordstrom's filling in as centre now, Dan, which is a big role for him. And then you've got John O'Phillips as the second centre. But yeah, Walker Sommer, it is ridiculous, isn't it? How many goals he's scoring. Another two goals in this game, and we'll talk about on the Sunday as well. He got another two in that game against Hull. But yeah, it's a big win for Sheffield just to kind of bounce back, get that win at home, knowing that you can do it without Tremblay as well.
Yeah, especially when you've had the fans talking about how big of an impact Tremblay is.
Yeah,
And I mean, we spoke about it at the start, so we're not going to go too much into it. But yeah, just having that game to sort of show the fans, like, yeah, he's a big loss, but we're not going to stop competing. Like, we're not just going to dwell on what's happened. Like, we're just going to carry on with our play, carry on with our season, really carry on pushing. And yeah, I mean, we said it as well. Having Tremblay go isn't a good thing, but it might be a good thing because it gives these players opportunities.
yeah,
And like Halfords is a guy that he's still young, but he's got that talent. And maybe giving him that extra opportunity, now he's sort of got settled into
that's a
the
step
league.
up now.
You're gonna get you might get a bit more from him. Like, and that's never a bad thing either because he's a guy that's sort of growing into the game. He's like 20, 21 years old, something like that. So yeah, I mean, there are always positives, and Sheffield have got to take those positives, and yeah, that's a big win for them.
Yeah. It's 2 points, and that battle for fourth, fifth, and sixth is going to be really, really interesting come playoffs. Obviously, fourth and fifth go into one group, and then the sixth place will go with seventh in the other group. So it'll be interesting to see who drops into that sixth place. But the final game on the Saturday was the Solway game. They finally got at home after being on the road for 2 weeks, and it sounded like a really entertaining game if you were a fan. Um, Obviously sold out, which is really nice to see at Solway. Them fans finally getting a home game to watch. But it was heartbreak at the end against the whole Seahawks, and it just sounded like another bonkers game with the Seahawks. Like if you let's just say this: if you're a neutral fan who's not watched hockey, go watch the whole Seahawks. Flipping heck, they will score goals, they'll concede goals, but they will make it an entertaining evening. And 6-5 on the night. Jason Hewitt's really getting those big goals at the moment. He gets a goal on the power play with less than a minute remaining. But there was a big talking point of the game, Dan, and that was the end of the second period, I believe.
Yeah, it was second.
As the
Yeah,
buzzer went, a bit of scuffles. I think Chamberlain was involved. He didn't actually get any penalties or sent off. I think he instigated it, and then everything happened there, and he didn't get anything else. But I think Liam Stenter was involved.
Arsenal.
Arson. He didn't get banned though. I think
No,
the ones that got
Henderson. Henderson got Henderson got a ban. I think.
did he? But I
I
know
think.
Stenton did. He was the main one
Yeah,
for
yeah,
the Sharks, and then obviously for the Seahawks it was Deck Jones and Edwards who got the
yeah,
bans or weren't able to play. So not as big a losses as a Liam Stenton, is it, Dan? And I think that showed on the Sunday with Solway. But that's a gut wrenching one, isn't it? Just they could have done with just the 1 point, couldn't they? Just take it to overtime, get a point that could be so big in the playoffs. And Hull, just as they've done, they score so many late goals, don't they? They've just got this never say die attitude, don't they?
yeah, and it's the way they still just send out the offense, even when it goes like late
It's just
into the
horrid, isn't
game.
it?
They still go for the offense. They still go for the goals. Like they never stop. And like even when it's like when you're tied in a game, a lot of teams will be like, all right, let's just not give up anything
Yeah,
silly.
let's get
Like
the
just
point.
let's not like lose the game just on that. But not Hull. Like they'll just still send out Sobchak, Svek,
They're going to
and
break your heart. They did
yeah,
it against Swindon with 30 seconds to go.
yeah, they're heartbreakers. They are a team of heartbreakers, and they but that's what they love to do. Like the players, they thrive off that. They thrive off just heavy offense and just holding the zone, just grinding teams down. And the thing is, what Matty's going to be looking at is if it works, there's no point in changing it. Like
Yeah.
you might concede a few goals, like we spoke about on the pods before. You might concede a few, but as long as you're winning the games, I mean, unless someone was looking at the goal differential, I mean, who cares? It's only the points that matter.
Yeah. No, when you're looking back at the season, you only look at how
Yeah,
many points you got from the game. But that's a big win for Hull on the road. It's not easy to play in
no,
Solway.
especially sold out as well.
Yeah, yeah. Not easy to play in Solway at all. And I can imagine Solway were really going for that game, and that's got to be gutting for them. And then having to go to Slough the next day. But if we're moving on to the Sunday game, and it was the one we were at, and Dan, we lasted half an hour. The Wildcats, I thought we actually played a really good road game for the first half an hour. We had chances. We just couldn't get that goal. And I think if we got that first goal, I think it might have been a different game. But credit to MK, they stuck in it as well. And it was just it's tit for tat, isn't it? Britnell goes up one end, hits the crossbar, the puck rims all the way round for a 3-on-2 for the Lightning. And you'd probably say Lightning's best player this season, Cowney,
Oh,
gets them that big first
what a
goal. And
goal
that
as
big
well.
first goal was key. Just sniped it, used the players as screens. And it was a really nice goal. And I feel from that goal, the Lightning then got a quick one again with Ben Solder. And I think we kind of knew, all right, the Lightning knew that this was their game, didn't they? It just had that feeling about it, didn't it?
Yeah, the thing that you always say of MK is if they score the first goal, you need to you need to do
Weather the
something
storm.
to nullify anything. Like if MK score two, three, four goals after that, they're gonna win that game. Like that is the point in MK where they're so dangerous because they will put everything forward and they will just keep going at you and just get those quick goals. They're a bit like Romford in that way.
Yeah.
Obviously they're a totally different team, but they're a bit like Romford in the way they score the goals, and that is when they go to kill. Like when they get that goal, you've got a team on the back foot and because they can roll those lines, because every line that they've got is the top line, they can just keep rolling the lines, and they'll just send out the players when your team is struggling, and they just won't stop. And if you can weather that storm and get another goal back, you've got a totally different game. But Swindon unfortunately weren't able to do that, and it's so tough in MK. Like when it's like that and you see it, it's so tough in MK.
Yeah, they were on it as well. Like the news actually the talking point of that was they dropped Spadafor and they brought Dylan Lawrence in, and Dylan Lawrence just added that little extra spark, didn't he, onto that third line. And he obviously got that third goal. I think that was the nail in the coffin goal for me. A really nice penalty shot, and fair play. Hamill did really well. He drew that penalty shot, and I think we all said, oh, Dylan Lawrence is going to take this because before he got injured, he was really good for them in the shootouts, wasn't he? He gets the goal and he undressed Mar and 3-0. And Dan, I've got to say, it just works, doesn't it? They've proven in this game that they don't really need Spadafor too much. And then Lawrence just adds that even more attacking depth, don't they?
Yeah,
Flipping heck.
and the thing, it was quite smart as well because you were saying about obviously Lawrence is good at penalty shots.
Yeah.
Obviously, that's also a really easy way of getting a guy confidence back.
Yeah.
Like he's come straight back into this team. It's going to be tough, obviously, coming straight back into this and what they're fighting for. You've got a Spadafor that's obviously been a fan favorite all year, and you're taking his spot. You want to show what you can do, and you've had a few fans doubting you as well when you were playing earlier on in the season. So just to get that goal, just to level his head a little bit and just sort of say, yeah, I'm back now. Like I'm back into this team. I've sort of made my mark, and just sort of calm him down a little bit. But yeah, it's they've got so much talent in that team. They are better off with a Lawrence and a Spadafor.
Yeah.
And we've said it all year. Like we've not changed our mind on what we've said. We've not been like, oh, maybe Spadafor actually does is a better option than maybe a forward. But we've always said that Lawrence was always a better option. And I
Yeah.
think bringing in that Forsberg signing, I think that just hit the nail on the head with that. I think bringing in that Forsberg signing really showed what they needed in an import D
Yeah.
man, and it's not Spadafor, unfortunately.
I think I think he actually still will get a couple games down the
Yeah, he
line.
will. He will.
It is nuts that they've got four imports. It is mental. Like you can say, I think if MK fans are watching, I want them to look from an outside point of view. you've got the luxury of being able to rotate in another import now, and it is bonkers. And I know they had to bring in an import to cover for Lawrence's injury. I completely get that because it was a long-term one. But we knew Lawrence was going to come back eventually. I was actually quite surprised he got brought in the Sunday game. I thought
Yeah.
they'd bring him in a fresh weekend game, Saturday and Sunday. But he's chosen to do that. But I still do think they will use Spadafor in some games. And I know MK fans have been saying they'd like Wallace to go full-time coach, which isn't a bad shout. We've all said we think Wallace would benefit much more just being a coach, and you get an even better forward in. But with the way Wallace is playing now, Dan, you can't drop that, can you? You cannot drop that. He's created such a good third line with himself, Carter Hamill, who's going to do all of the forechecking, all of the pace because Wallace is a bit older, and you've now got Lawrence on that line as well. It's just bonkers, isn't it?
Yeah, and the special teams as well. Like you've got
Oh,
Tim Wallace, unreal on the PK. He's obviously on the power play as well. Like he runs that third line. It's just, yeah, like you say, he's put himself in a position now where he is the main factor in nearly every part of his team.
yeah.
And I mean, yeah, he's smart. He knows what he's doing. I mean, we said he's probably got the easiest job with that team, but at the same time, it is a tough
There's
job
some
because
difficulty in it, yeah.
you've got a lot of players there that think they should be higher up in the lineup.
Yeah.
Like you've
That's
got a lot of like they are a team of players that they all want to be at the top.
yeah.
So Tim Wallace has got to manage that, and he's got to go into these games, and he has to make that tough decision. Like he's got to make that tough decision of bringing Lawrence in and dropping Spadafor. Like
Yeah.
without
As a coach,
like
you have to put feelings aside. Because I reckon Spadafor is probably one of the big guys in the dressing room. I can
yeah.
imagine he is. The personality he is. I know all the players really like him as well. But as a coach, you have to make those decisions which you think is going to do the best for the team.
And the thing is, recently, obviously, earlier on the season, we spoke about Spadafor a lot for taking those silly penalties. But recently, he's not been doing that. Like,
No.
he's not even given Wallace a reason to drop him. Like, it would literally totally be just on Wallace's opinion and what he wants and what he wants in his team.
Yeah.
So, yeah, he has tough decisions to make every night. And I think he does get a lot of stick.
Yeah.
I think he does, but we can see from both sides of the stories what fans will be thinking, and yeah, he's a guy that he's got a tough job.
Yeah. It, there's so much pressure on MK because they should win everything with the team they've got. The side which a lot of fans see is that they've got the best team on paper. The amount of superstars they've got, they should win a lot of things. But then you've got the pressure as a coach to go and do that. And I agree with what you've been saying. You have to make those decisions and stuff. So, and this was without McEwen and Sisters, by the way. And they're still managing to put in a performance like that. And I actually think Sisters was one of their best players before he hasn't been playing recently, and I don't know the reason. Obviously, McEwen, he was playing that third line center role, so it'll be interesting to see where he fits back in the team. Obviously, with that third line working so well, but we've spoken enough on it. It was a really good performance. Bradley at the end just stopping the shutout.
Yeah, what was it
Just
like? 28 seconds to go,
yeah,
something like that.
20 seconds to go, just completely shutting out the shutout. But then no fist bumps, just straight back to the centre. And just one to forget for Swindon. And this is a good stat, Dan. Swindon haven't lost by more than 2 goals the whole season. That was the first game really where it just kind of got out of it. And that happens in MK, doesn't it? Swindon in previous seasons, we've said it, have been blown out a lot in Milton Keynes. Once they get rolling, it's so hard to play. And I think that was the one game this season where Milton Keynes got the game, and credit to them. They were really good. And I had a couple Milton Keynes fans saying that was the best second period they've ever played. And they've struggled a bit in second periods, but they come out that second period 3 goals ahead. So yeah, just a really good performance from the Lightning, and they end up gaining a point on Swindon because of that overtime point, which they did lose him, but that's such a valuable point. So it's a frustrating for Swindon. I'm not too disappointed because I actually think for the first half an hour we played all right. We obviously got that win on the Saturday as well. But for the rest of the season, Dan, for Swindon, you've just got to think if anything slips up, we can try and capitalize on it. But let's really try and make a good run now to the end of the playoffs. We've had a little bit of a patch where it's not been as consistent, but if we can get a good consistent run now to playoffs, you've got more than a chance to try and get another trophy.
Yeah, and the thing is, if you are looking at it like that league title is out of reach, obviously it's not, but most likely it is. That sort of it brings a bit of weight off the players now. Like they haven't got to be every game isn't like a must win, if you get what I mean. It's not
Yeah.
like a pushing for that for those points. Um, they can just sort of calm down a little bit now, and now they've got a new focus point. It's a
Just
bit. It's
finish
a
the season well.
yeah. It's like we were talking about Romford, obviously focusing on their cup with Swindon. They can focus on playoffs now. Like they can focus on. I'm 100% not saying they're out of the league race, but it's going to be tough to obviously get back into it. And yeah, they've got bigger things to think about now. They've got a more realistic thing to look at, I think.
Yeah. I'm excited though because I still think there's time to settle with Vanya as well. And obviously it
Yep.
was his first time on top line, so we've got time to play around with it a bit and see how it goes. And if you do get that chance to capitalize on the slip up with Milton Keynes or Leeds, who knows?
Yeah,
The
that's it.
National League produces crazy
And
things sometimes.
and MK Leeds have still got to play, so
Yeah.
it's still that to come. So
Yeah.
it's all exciting times.
We're still gonna go and support it. The next game was just again we're repeating ourselves, but if you want to go and watch a team, go and watch the whole Seahawks because they were 4-3 down and they end up winning 5-4 down with 5 minutes to go. They kind of did what Romford did to Leeds. They were 4-3 down and then they scored in the 55th and the 57th on the power play and they take both points again against the Steel Dogs. And we'll mention it now. Walker Sommer scored twice again, two really nice goals again. Just he is ridiculous with his goal scoring, his pace, the ability to get past players. And congratulations to him for being the first player to hit 50 goals in 44 games, over a goal a game. It's just bonkers. But the Seahawks in the end, and normally you'd think Sobchak would be getting the winning assist, Dan, but it was Sobchak who got both goals to win the game. So he got both goals, and it put him on 99 points. So he couldn't quite get that 100th, but it's back-to-back 4-point weekends for Hull, and hey, who says they can't go and win the playoffs, winning 5-4, 6-5, 7-4? Like they did it before.
Well, yeah, I mean they're winning games. That's the main thing,
Yeah.
right? Like they're winning these games, and they seem to love a comeback against Sheffield. I think
The
that's three
third
games
time.
this yeah, three
Yeah.
games now that Sheffield have blown leads against them. Um,
They were 3-1 up as well, Sheffield.
yeah, that's what I mean. So yeah, holders seem to have Sheffield's number in a minute, and but yeah, I mean Sobchak setting himself up perfectly for next weekend to most likely hit that
If he
100 point
doesn't get
mark.
it next
I
weekend, then
It's our fault, I guess. I think we've jinxed him
oh
if
my
so.
days. Surely he gets a further assist or something.
He'll get something.
Yeah.
If they pull the goalie, they'll just send him out and he'll get that
Yeah.
empty net if needed. But yeah, I mean Hull are rolling like back to back 4 point weekends. It's tough to do at this time of the season. A lot of teams are obviously fighting for those points. It's hard
Yeah.
to get that consistency going. And yeah, but Hull are doing it, and it doesn't matter how they're doing it, but they're doing it, and they're grinding out, and they're getting these wins.
Yeah, they've still got Phillips to come back as well. Obviously, don't really know what's up with that, but I assume he'll be back for playoffs. So
Yeah,
that
they
will be a
they
big ad for them defensively.
yeah they won't want to rush him back. Like
No.
they at this time of the season, they won't want to rush him. They'll want to make sure he's fully ready for like
Yeah.
playoffs. They'll even if he doesn't play for the rest of this year, like for the
Yeah.
rest of this season, like he as long as he's fit for playoffs, that's what they'll want, and that's what Hull are going to be looking at as well.
Yeah, they haven't really got too much to play for, and they know they can outscore their defense anyway at the moment. Um, Another just gut wrenching game for the Solway Sharks, Dan. Down in Slough, it was always going to be tough, wasn't it? We know how tough it is to play in Slough after a long journey. Um, and it sounded like another crazy game. Before we get into it, though, Solway Sharks with two D men. Sorry, not two D men, four D men, two D pairings. Sorry, so they had four D men to play in Slough. I dread to think how much ice time they put up in that game. It's got to be half an hour, 35 minutes down, maybe 40 minutes for some of them. But they concede a goal with less than 5 minutes to go. And it was Marcel Ballas with the hat, just
Probably did a
breaking,
knee slide as well.
probably just breaking the Sharks' hearts. And yeah, they get a 0 point weekend, Dan, and they were just that close from getting a point in both games.
Yeah, and when you look at it that way, that's one win like out of a weekend if you add up the points. Um, but yeah, Solway, they really struggle to shut down games,
Yeah.
and even if it's like they're tying and even getting into overtime, they just can't seem to do it. And
They were 3-1 up again in the game. Callie
yeah,
Robertson had a really good game. He got a hat trick.
but we've said like that's Solway's biggest issue this year is they've not been able to sort of take control of these games and finish them off.
Yeah.
They've always had their lead taken away, or they've been tying and they've had their tie taken away. And it's just when you look at it that way, it's those little points when you look at it this part of the season now that would make a huge difference, even if they got to overtime and lost. Like even if it's like that, they
Yeah.
still got that point. And yeah, it's so tough, and you could see that Solway are really getting frustrated now because they've had a few like altercations in both games.
Yeah.
Like they're putting everything into it, and they're just getting nothing back.
The
And it's like,
emotions are coming out because Morris had a fight with Alderson with less than 5 minutes to go, which is an automatic suspension, isn't it? So you've now got Alderson out for at least one game. And you can just tell the emotions are getting to these players, and it's
yeah,
understandable. I can imagine it's so frustrating. You've got that playoff spot for a month or two, and then you've got out of that playoff spot and you can't get back into it. I can imagine it's so frustrating, and with the National League level going up, when it's not going for you, it is tough, isn't it?
yeah, it's so tough to get back that sort of win those games. But the thing is, Solway they just need to. We've said it again. Like they need to get something. They need to get a spark. Like they need to
Yeah.
build on something.
Which isn't
Um,
getting bans.
no, that's it. And especially, yeah, going into games with 4D men isn't going to help shut down a game. But they're after the season that they had last year of how close they got to playoffs, they're really going to want it this year. And all the players they want it. They wanted it so bad last year. And yeah, it's going to be tough for them. But if they're going to get any momentum or anything to push them through, they got to think about last year, and they've got to think about how close they got, and they
Yeah.
just got to push themselves from that.
You've almost got to use that pain, ain't you? You don't want to feel it again. Let's just get this win over the line. If I think they just need one game to prove that they can shut the game down. They need one game where they've got a lead and they hold on to that lead for the whole third period. Because it seems to be these third periods, Dan, where there's just goals back and forth. And in the national, it's proven you cannot do that because it can go against you. But there's still 10 games to go. It is still tight. They've got games against Telford as well. Those are going to be absolutely huge.
Yeah,
The one thing I'll say on Telford is they had their little crap patch at the start of the season.
early, yeah, yeah,
They
yeah,
had it early, and I remember us saying on a podcast, they may be in a bad patch right now, but they've got plenty of time to get back into it. And it's this clutch end of the season, and they're just going about their business. Their defense hasn't been unbelievable either. They're conceding a lot of goals, but they're just getting through those games, aren't they? And it's kind of switched now. Solway are going through their little patch where they can't really find a win at the moment.
yeah. But this is the crunch time bit.
That's what I
This
mean.
is this
Yeah.
is this is the tough bit. Like Telford will be glad that they've got that bit out of the way. Now they've got time to
They've
rectify
they've
it.
got
They've
Henderson
got
and
their
Thompson
reports. Yeah,
settled. Yeah,
they've got their lines. They've got everyone sort of getting a bit of chemistry going now, and they can just sort of roll and roll and roll. Whereas Solway are grinding, grinding, grinding. Like
yeah,
they're fighting so hard and coming the end of the season. And the thing is, that's the hardest time to sort of get these wins because the teams around you are fighting as well. Like
yeah.
everyone's fighting for these points, so getting these wins is so tough. And sometimes when we've said it as well, when you're trying too hard, you do make mistakes, and that's when you lose the game. It's like you just need to sort of. It's easy to say from my point of view because I'm not having to step on the ice every weekend, but you just sort of need to calm down and just sort of chill out and just sort of don't try too hard, and it will come just naturally. Um, but again, like I say, it's easy for me to say when I'm sat in my room.
Yeah, it's easy for us to sit here on our arse and just, hey, they need to do this, do that. It is flipping hard in this National League. Um, but we were talking about the Telford Tigers. They may have conceded 6 goals, but Dan, they've doubled it and scored 12 goals. 12. I cannot remember the last time there was a game with 18 goals in it. Flipping heck. Um, Eric Henderson having a 5 point night with a hat trick. David Thompson having a 6 point night with 5 assists. Bryn got a couple points. You had Louis Newell as well getting on the score sheet. It's just, it just all went right for Telford, really. And it was just a Bristol collapse, wasn't it, defensively? And it's a weekend to forget, if we're putting it bluntly. I think 21 goals conceded this weekend. You can't do that, can you? You're never going to get any points from that.
Yeah, and the thing is, they scored 6 goals. Like if that was if if you're in Telford's shoes, if you're conceding 6 goals, you're most likely going to lose that
You should
game.
win that game now.
Like yeah, you shouldn't be winning the game conceding 6 goals. And I mean, what was it? 5 or 4 of the goals were from one guy. Walensky had had a
Yeah,
good. I
Walensky
mean,
scored 4.
yeah,
Flipping heck. Like, you come
yeah,
into this new team, you score 4, and you've lost. It's like,
yeah,
oh
and
my goodness.
it's the thing is that's the thing. Like Bristol scored 6 goals. That's not bad. Like it's not a bad thing. The
No.
bad thing is that they conceded 12. Like that's the bad thing. And yeah, it's just a weird game. Like we know Telford have had really like tough defense the whole year. Like they've been really struggling to sort of keep the goals out, but they've had no problem scoring since these imports have turned up. Like since Henderson and Thompson have come in, they've had no problem scoring goals,
No.
and they would be in a much better position if they had that strong D as well. Like if they had that strong D with that scoring threat, like they'd be in a much better position than they are now.
Yeah.
And yeah, they would be pushing for higher up the table, I'd imagine.
Yeah.
But like you say, it's a weekend to forget for Bristol, and again, they're a team that's sort of in their crunch time, and they need to sort of start pushing as well. And all the games are counting for them now as well.
Yeah. I don't think Butler was playing. I don't know what's happening in that. He might have an injury or something, but
He's sort of on and off.
that's a key guy which you're missing from your team. Your import goalie and Napier, who we know can be so good on his day, but if he's not getting protected and it's not going for him, you're not going to be confident as a goalie, are you, Dan? I think he got pulled in that game at 6, and young Harry Thomas had to come in, and he got man of the match. I don't know whether that was a pity man of the match or whether he just faced so many shots, because in that final period, Dan, they only actually scored 2 goals, and one was with 30 seconds to go because it was 10-5 after the second period. So you must be thinking, flipping heck, is this going to be like 20
15,
plus goals in
16.
this game? But yeah, 12-6. Telford kind of put their foot off the pedal a little bit in that final period. But yeah, it's a crazy game. But at the end of the day,
It's a win.
Telford get 2 points,
Yeah.
and it's 2 points to keep him in that playoff spot, and that's what we're going to get off now onto now. And everyone's pretty much played the same games apart from Leeds, but they're going to catch up a bit. Obviously playing on this Tuesday and the Friday and Saturday. So we got MK at the top with 67 points. We then have Leeds in second with 63, but they got 2 games in hand. And because Swindon did take a point off MK, Dan, it means that if Leeds win their 2 games in hand, it's neck and neck, 67 points. I can't remember a title race in the National League which has been this close with this little amount of games to go.
Yeah, I know it's two top teams, and I'm telling you that game MK Leeds is gonna
Two
be
weeks before the end of the
unbelievable.
season.
That is gonna
Oh
be
my days.
unreal in MK as well. I mean, if you've not got a game to go to or you're sort of around MK at that time, mark it in your calendar and
It will
get
sell
down
out
there.
as well.
Like, yeah.
100% will sell
Oh
out.
yeah. Like if you're around there, or if you haven't got a game, or you're neutral, or you're a Basingstoke fan that wants to watch a good game,
Yeah.
I mean, get
Elite League
yourself
fan.
down.
If you're an Elite League
Yeah,
fan watching this pod,
Coventry fan.
MK versus Leeds.
Yeah, I
Watch
mean,
it because
mark it
that
in
is
your
going to be the
calendars.
top standard of the National.
That will be. I think if it still goes like it is now, which I imagine it will be, that could potentially be the decider of the league. Like
That
there
could
could
be the two
potentially
point decider.
that could be, and yeah,
Sorry if I hurt someone's ears there by shouting in my mic.
that will be an unreal game.
Dan, I think you'll be going to that one, won't you?
I don't think
Especially
it's a
if
think. I know I'll be going to that game.
you know what? I'm not going to because I think Swindon have a game, and I've been to
Yeah, they're
every
playing
game this
Bristol. They're
season.
playing Bristol that week. I've already looked.
Oh, I know. I'm so jealous you're going to go to that, but I've got to be there for the Swindon boys, just in case. But yeah, Swindon are behind that with 62, 5 points off the Lightning, and if Leeds obviously win those two, it'll be 5 points off them. And then the fourth, fifth, and sixth battle. You've got Hull on 57, Sheffield on 52. So Hull have kind of solidified that fourth place stand. They're actually only 5 off Swindon. So they could make a little push maybe for third place, which would shake up the groups a little bit for playoffs. And then you got Peterborough, who've played 2 less games than Sheffield and a game less than Hull, who are on 50 points. So at the moment, it's looking like Peterborough might get that sixth spot, but there's still plenty of games to play. And then that playoff spot down, which we're on about, Romford, they've got 2 games in hand now because obviously they played the final. But they're kind of solidified in that seventh place. And I think that's probably where they'll finish, unless Telford can overjump them as well. But either way, oh no, seventh and eighth aren't in the same group. But Telford are on 38 and Solware on 35 now. Oh, bless me.
Bless you. Bless you.
Sorry. But Dan, the key thing out of that is it's more than one game they have to make on Telford now. It's 3 points. It's not just a game and then you're now level. It's more than one game, isn't it?
Yeah, and like you said earlier, they've got a game against Telford.
I think they've got
So,
two. They've got two. One in Solway, and then the last game of the season, Telford versus Solway.
well, if you're around Solway or around Telford, get yourself to those games
Well,
because
where is it actually? I think it's in
it'll be in one.
Telford.
It'll be in one of those
It's in
places.
Telford because Swindon played Telford at home, so it'll be Telford. Oh boy.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
get yourself down to Telford because that's going to be another good game. And
I hope it
this
comes
is,
down to that game.
oh yeah, I mean
There'll
this
be
is the time.
tears and there'll be elation.
This is the time of the season where games are like everything is on the line for games. Like this is the time that everyone loves because as a fan, all these games are matters, and as a player, you're more nervous than you've ever been. But yeah, this is crunch time now for a lot of teams, and they've got to really step up. If they're not on form now, they need to get some form quick, and they really need to end the season very very well.
Yeah, absolutely. And then moving on to the Pit Bulls, they're 8 points behind the Tigers now, Dan, and I think it's a little bit out of reach. And I think for pride, it will be between the Pit Bulls and the Bees to see who can finish in that 10th spot because the Bees are now only 2 points behind the Pit Bulls. So that'll be a nice little battle as well. But that's the league. And then obviously we mentioned that Sobchak, he's 1 point away with 99. And after a really strong weekend, Walker Sommer's now up to second in scoring with 91 points. And obviously, we mentioned Sommer with 50 goals. So that wraps up a long episode, Dan. Obviously, without an interview, we will hopefully get a Leeds player on next week. So make sure you're around for that one. I'm not going to spoil who it will be just yet. But Dan, anything to add on this one?
No, I don't think I've got anything to add. I think we've sort of gone over everything.
Just to say this, Charlie would have come on if Swindon got the 4 points, but we didn't, so he didn't come on. And I think he's actually got a trip booked in now to go to Africa, which is actually really good for him. I'm happy for him because he's been wanting to go for a while, which does mean he'll probably be off the pod for a bit longer. So we're just gonna have to carry it even more, Dan. But yeah, that just an update on Charlie because I know a couple people always ask where's Charlie when they see us at the games. He is still alive. He's just quite busy. And me and Dan are running it at the moment, but we might get my dad in an episode now and again because it's always nice to have Ian, isn't it?
Yeah, it's always nice to have Ian on there. Can't be a bit of Ian,
Yeah,
but yeah, it's good. It's good. We're doing good. I
yeah.
think a lot of fans will be happy that Charlie's not here, and a lot of fans will be sad. So
Also, I might be on Banners on the Walls Wednesday night. I might be on his show on Wednesday. It depends whether he wants me on there. I couldn't go on last week because I was actually in Cardiff against Sheffield, which was an unbelievable game. In the semi-final where Cardiff made the comeback, but I might be on that. So if I am, I'll let people know on the socials. You can come watch that. But yeah, thank you for watching this episode. Well done again to the Leeds Knights for becoming the cup champions, and it'll be interesting to see if they can get that treble. But there's still plenty of hockey to be played, and I'm sure there'll be a lot of twists and turns. We'll see you in next week's episode. Peace.
goodbye.